Productivity and Costs by Industry, Manufacturing and Mining Industries 2019. For release 10 a.m. EDT, Thursday, June 25, 2020. Labor productivity declines were widespread among manufacturing industries in 2019, with decreases in 54 of the 86 four-digit NAICS industries. Of the 51 industries in durable manufacturing, 31 had productivity decreases in 2019, led by a 7.8% decline in the productivity of the HVAC and commercial refrigeration equipment industry. Nondurable manufacturing also had widespread declines in 2019, with productivity falling in 23 of 35 industries, led by a 13.1% decline in the other leather products industry. All four industries in the mining sector posted productivity declines in 2019, led by the coal mining industry with a decrease of 6.6%. See Chart 1. Chart 1. Manufacturing and mining industries with the largest change in productivity, 2019, NAICS four-digit industries. Chart 1 shows the industries with the largest changes in productivity in 2019. Change in productivity is approximately equal to the change in output minus the change in hours worked. 4 of the 6 industries with declining productivity below the diagonal line had growth in hours worked with declining output. Of the 6 industries with productivity gains, those above the diagonal line, only audio and video equipment had growth in both output and hours worked. Labor productivity trends in NAICS three-digit industries, 2019 manufacturing, labor productivity decreased in 18 of the 21 NAICS three-digit manufacturing industries in 2019, as output declined in 17 industries and hours worked rose in 10. See Chart 2. The food industry had the largest productivity gain, 0.6%, as output increased and hours decreased. The leather and allied products industry had the largest productivity decline, 9.8%, as output fell and hours worked increased, each by 5.1%. Mining, labor productivity declined 2.3% in the oil and gas extraction industry, where an increase in hours worked outpaced growth in output. See Chart 2. The mining, except oil and gas industry had a productivity decline of 3.8%, as hours worked increased while output declined. Chart 2. Productivity growth in NAICS three-digit manufacturing and mining industries, 2019. Trends in unit labor costs in 2019. Unit labor costs, which reflect the total labor costs required to produce a unit of output, rose in 77 of the 86 NAICS four-digit manufacturing industries. Of the 51 industries in durable manufacturing, 45 experienced rising unit labor costs, led by the railroad rolling stock industry, which increased 10.7%. Nondurable manufacturing also experienced widespread increases in unit labor costs, with 32 of the 35 industries recording an increase, led by the textile furnishings mills industry with a rise of 17.6%. Of the 4 industries in the mining sector, 3 had increases in unit labor costs, led by the coal mining industry, which increased 7.0%. See Table 1. Unit labor cost trends in NAICS three-digit industries, 2019. Manufacturing, employers experience increased unit labor costs when hourly compensation growth exceeds productivity growth. Unit labor costs increased in 20 of the 21 manufacturing industries, as hourly compensation growth outpaced that of productivity. Textile mills was the exception and had a decrease in unit labor costs due to hourly compensation declines that exceeded productivity declines. See Chart 3. Mining, unit labor costs declined in the oil and gas extraction industry 3.4%, as productivity decreased 2.3% and hourly compensation decreased 5.6%. See Chart 3. The mining, except oil and gas industry saw a 5.6% increase in unit labor costs, as hourly compensation rose 1.7% while productivity dropped 3.8%. Chart 3. Unit labor costs, productivity, and hourly compensation in NAICS three-digit manufacturing and mining industries, 2019. Long-term trends in labor productivity and unit labor costs. Chart 4 displays the number of NAICS four-digit manufacturing and mining industries with increases in productivity, output, and hours worked for selected time periods through 2019. Labor productivity. Over the entire 1987 to 2019 period, labor productivity rose in 83 of the 91 manufacturing and mining industries. Output rose in 58 industries, while hours worked increased in only 17. In the 17 industries where hours worked increased, they rose at a slow pace, 0.7% per year on average. During the more recent 2007 to 19 period, which included the Great Recession of 2007 to 09, productivity increased in 45 industries. These increases are predominantly the result of a decline in hours worked rather than an increase in output, as hours worked fell in 35 of these industries while output increased in only 18. Unit labor costs. During the 1987 to 2019 period, unit labor costs increased in 76 of the 86 NAICS four-digit manufacturing industries. All 5 mining industries saw an increase in unit labor costs. From 2007 to 2019, unit labor costs increased in 79 of the 86 manufacturing industries and in 3 of the 5 mining industries. Unit labor costs increased the most in the beverages industry. The computer and peripheral equipment industry recorded the largest productivity gain as well as the largest unit labor cost decline during both the 1987 to 2019 and 1987 to 2007 periods. However, between 2007 and 2019, the oil and gas extraction industry posted the greatest productivity growth and the largest unit labor cost decline. Chart 4. Manufacturing and mining industries with increases in labor productivity, output, and hours worked. NAICS four-digit industries. Additional information. Time periods for data covered by this release precede, and are therefore not impacted by, the COVID-19 pandemic. Manufacturing industry output measures for 2018 and earlier years are constructed primarily using data from the economic censuses and annual surveys of the U.S. Census Bureau together with data on price changes primarily from BLS. These measures have been revised due to the release of the 2017 economic census and the 2018 annual survey of manufacturers. Manufacturing industry output for 2019 is estimated based on historical relationships between BLS sectoral output, BLS price indexes, and data on industrial production from the Federal Reserve Board. Technical note. Labor productivity. Labor productivity describes the relationship between real output and the labor hours involved in its production. These measures show the changes from period to period in the amount of goods and services produced per hour worked. Although the labor productivity measures relate output in an industry to hours worked of all persons in that industry, they do not measure the specific contribution of labor to growth in output. Rather, they reflect the joint effects of many influences, including changes in technology, capital investment, utilization of capacity, energy, and materials, the use of purchased services inputs, including contract employment services, the organization of production, the characteristics and effort of the workforce, and managerial skill. Unit labor costs. Unit labor costs represent the cost of labor required to produce 1 unit of output. The unit labor cost indexes are computed by dividing an index of nominal industry labor compensation by an index of real industry output. Unit labor costs also describe the relationship between compensation per hour worked hourly compensation and real output per hour worked labor productivity. When hourly compensation growth outpaces productivity, unit labor costs increase. Alternatively, when productivity growth exceeds hourly compensation, unit labor costs decrease. Output. Industry output is measured as an annual weighted index of the changes in the various products in real terms provided for sale outside the industry. Real industry output is usually derived by deflating nominal sales or values of production using BLS price indexes, but for some industries it is measured by physical quantities of output. Industry output reflects sectoral value of production, derived by adjusting shipments for changes in inventories and removing intra-industry transactions. Industry output measures are constructed primarily using data from the economic censuses and annual surveys of the Census Bureau, U.S. Department of Commerce, together with data on price changes primarily from BLS. Data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis at the U.S. Department of Commerce is used in part to construct intra-industry transactions. Other data sources include the Energy Information Administration at the U.S. Department of Energy and the U.S. Geological Survey at the U.S. Department of the Interior. Manufacturing industry output for 2019 is estimated based on historical relationships between BLS sectoral output, BLS price indexes, and data on industrial production from the Federal Reserve Board. Labor hours. Labor hours are measured as annual hours worked by all employed persons in an industry. Data on industry employment and hours come primarily from the BLS Current Employment Statistics (CES) survey and Current Population Survey (CPS). CES data on the number of total and production worker jobs held by wage and salary workers in non-farm establishments are supplemented with CPS data on self-employed and unpaid family workers to estimate industry employment. Hours worked estimates are derived using CES and CPS employment, CES data on the average weekly hours paid of production workers, CPS data on hours of non-production, self-employed, and unpaid family workers, and ratios of hours worked to hours paid based on data from the National Compensation Survey (NCS). For some industries, employment and hours data are supplemented or further disaggregated using data from the BLS Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages (QCEW), the Census Bureau, or other sources. Hours worked are estimated separately for different types of workers and then are directly aggregated. No adjustments for labor composition are made. Labor compensation, defined as payroll plus supplemental payments, is a measure of the cost to the employer of securing the services of labor. Payroll includes salaries, wages, commissions, dismissal pay, bonuses, vacation and sick leave pay, and compensation in kind. Supplemental payments include both legally required expenditures and payments for voluntary programs. The legally required portion consists primarily of federal old age and survivors insurance, unemployment compensation, and workers' compensation. Payments for voluntary programs include all programs not specifically required by legislation, such as the employer portion of private health insurance and pension plans. Industry compensation measures are constructed primarily using data from the BLS QCEW and the economic censuses of the Census Bureau at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Table 1. Recent labor productivity, unit labor costs, and related data. Table 1. Recent labor productivity, unit labor costs, and related data, continued. Table 1. Recent labor productivity, unit labor costs, and related data, continued. Table 2. Long-run labor productivity, unit labor costs, and related data. Table 2. Long-run labor productivity, unit labor costs, and related data, continued. Table 2. Long-run labor productivity, unit labor costs, and related data, continued.